Welcome to Part 2 of Ridgewood. Visit brooksaudiobooks.com for an awesome collection of unique, full-length audiobooks. And be sure to subscribe to be notified when new books are released. Chapter 5. The boys got out of bed shortly after dawn the next morning. The sky was clear, but there wasn't a hint of a breeze, and even before the sun rose, the air felt unbearably hot and stifling, an experience neither of Tom's friends had ever encountered before. "I have to say, Tom, this is an awful morning," Sam complained. "I feel like I'm melting just standing here in my clothes. I'm already as weak as butter in the sun. I can't imagine how we'll breathe once the sun comes up. Hugh." With that, Sam plopped down, exhausted. "This is not shaping up to be a great day for rowing," Henry chimed in. "I propose we swim and push the boat instead. It'll be cooler and not much harder. Does it ever rain here? Because if it does, I'm ready for a downpour. I'm wilted, and nothing less than a soaking will bring me back to life." "Well," Tom replied, "let's go get soaked then. I'm diving off the boathouse pier. It's low tide now, and it's a clear jump of about 10 feet. A good plunge will wake us up, and by the time we're done, breakfast should be ready. Plus, the tide will be changing, which is a relief." "Why that?" Henry asked. "Because when the tide changes, a sea breeze will kick in. This kind of heat is what we would endure all summer if it weren't for the breezes. Usually, we only feel this heat at dead low tide, and it's always followed by a nice, strong sea breeze when the tide turns. Instead of swimming to the island, we'll be able to sail over. But for now, let's take our plunge." After breakfast, the boys made their way to the boathouse to load their gear onto the boat. The tide had shifted, and just as Tom had anticipated, a refreshing breeze had begun to blow, restoring Sam's stamina and fortifying Henry's resolve. "It's best to fill the boat's water barrels," Tom advised. "We'll need water on the journey, and once we're on the island, we'll need it while we search for a permanent supply." "Speaking of which," Sam interjected, "what are we going to dig with?" "Ah, there's another oversight," Tom replied. "If Jenkins Mariner had made such a mistake, he wouldn't have survived his time on the island. We need a shovel and a pick. I'll dash up to the house and see if I can find them while you two fill the water barrels." When Tom returned to the boat, he found Maum Lucy waiting with a large bundle. "What's this, Maum Lucy?" he asked. "Oh, nothing much. Just thought you young gentlemen might be planning to get a bit of sleep at night, and since you haven't thought of it yourselves, I brought you some bedding." "All right, boys," Tom said, shaking his head. "We're really losing our wits here. We've forgotten a lot already. The only way forward is to picture ourselves on the island, spending a whole day and night in our minds to figure out what we'll need." "That's a solid plan," Henry agreed. "I'll start. First thing, I'll need my mother because I've lost a button from my collar." The group chuckled, but there was truth in his words. A few buttons, a needle or two, and some sturdy thread were quickly added to their supplies. "Now let's see," Tom continued. "We need to build a shelter as our first task. We've got all the tools for that because I've planned it out thoroughly. Then, for our digging tools. All right. Now for breakfast, let me think," he said, mentally running through the materials and utensils they had already gathered. As they continued through their imagined day on the island, the boys found their list of supplies was now nearly complete. From Maum Lucy's bundle, they picked out 3 blankets, rolling them up tightly and stashing them behind the water keg at the stern. Maum Lucy had also brought pillows, sheets, and a large mattress, which she urged them to take, but they refused to add anything unnecessary to their load. At the last minute, one boy remembered matches. They agreed that 3 small boxes would be enough, as they could maintain a fire with a bit of caution. With that, they said goodbye to Maum Lucy and untied the boat. The sail caught the wind, and the Red Bird leaned slightly to one side, the breeze coming from the side, as the boys settled into their spots. "I say, young Tom," called Maum Lucy, "how long do you plan to be gone?" "Oh, I don't know. Maybe a month," he replied. "Well, make sure it's not a day longer than that, mind you." Chapter 6. The sea breeze was fresh and inviting, blowing steadily from a good direction. There were plenty of winding paths between the small islands, and occasionally the route took them briefly against the wind. This only happened in the narrower channels, so they had to make several short tacks, giving Tom a chance to teach his friends the art of sailing. For the most part, the open water allowed Tom to steer directly toward B Island and keep the wind at their backs. It was barely 11 o'clock when the Red Bird arrived at the island, and the boys hopped ashore. First thing Jenkins Mariner did when he gathered his thoughts was build his home, said Sam. Let's take a page from that skilled mariner's book and pick our building spot before we haul anything back from the wreck. I mean, before we start unloading our treasure. That's a smart plan, said Tom. We should minimize the amount we carry. Let's see. We're on the north side of the island. If I recall, the enslaved quarters were to the east of here, and they must have found water nearby, so we better look for the remains of that African settlement to see if we can locate the old reservoirs. How far from the shore were the quarters? Henry asked. I can't remember if I ever knew, but why do you ask? Well, it seems to me this island has grown somewhat like the hair on your head in a shark. The tall trees seem to have agreed on a spacing of about 6 feet between themselves, while the smaller ones have tried their best to fit in between. Vines have tangled themselves among the larger and smaller trees, creating a sort of net throughout the woods, and cane shoots have popped up to fill in any gaps. It strikes me that if we plan to search for the old quarters beyond the shore, we should prepare to clear out the island as we move along. Hey, Henry, Sam said, if you had to clear an acre of this overgrowth on your own, where would you start? I'd grab a sturdy axe, a grubbing hoe, some matches, and some kindling. Then I'd take a good look at the thicket. After that, I'd definitely be in need of a long break. Yeah, I guess you would. But that's not what I was asking. Forget it for now. Tom, I don't see why this spot isn't just as good for our camp as any other. There's a bit of a bluff here, and we could clear out a space for our hut much easier than finding traces of the slave quarters that were torn down a dozen years ago or so. True, but what about water? Well, I doubt we'd find any remnants of a well at the other spot, and even if we did, we'd have to dig it out all over again. Why not just dig here instead? After some back and forth and a quick look along the shore in both directions, we settled on this idea. Building a shelter was straightforward. We just needed to put up a frame of poles, cut down some brush to use for walls, and cover it all with palmetto leaves, sourced from a type of dwarf palm that grows plentifully in this area. These leaves are familiar to folks up north only as palm leaf fans. Along the shores of northeast Carolina, they thrive in the swamps and woodlands. With a bit of effort, the boys made a bed for themselves, while Tom and Henry packed it with long strands of gray Spanish moss. Meanwhile, Sam prepared dinner, first rowing out to catch enough fish for their meal while his friends finished the house. Now, Sam said once they had eaten, and the boys had settled down for a break. It's almost sunset, and we're all worn out. We've got plenty of water left, so I suggest we wait until morning to dig our well. Sounds good to me, replied the other boys, pleased to take a break. I've got something I need you to help me with, Sam added. Actually, 2 things. With that, he walked over to the boat to take a look around. Soon he returned and said, One's a goner, here's the other. He handed Tom an odd-looking fish, nearly black, about 8 inches long, slender, and shaped in a way that was quite unusual. Check this out, he said. Its jaw sticks out in such a strange way that I can't tell which side is the top and which is the bottom. Turn either side up, and it looks like it should be the other way around. Plus, it has what looks like a tiny matchlighter on its head, or maybe that's the bottom. I can't quite tell. Look. He pointed at the fish's head. There was a flat, oval shape created by a ridge in the skin, and the flat area enclosed within this oval was marked with diagonal ridges, arranged in perfect order. The whole thing resembled the illustration on the opposite page. What I want to know, Sam said, is what kind of fish this is, which side is supposed to be on top, and the purpose of this matchlighter. I'm afraid I can't be much help, Tom replied. A year ago, I would have immediately told you that this fish is a pilot fish, named for the way it follows ships like sharks do, as if it's guiding them. But now, I'm not sure what to call it. Why the change? Henry asked. Because I just don't know. I've been poring over encyclopedias, natural histories, and fish classifications about our local fish, and I've discovered that everything I thought I knew is wrong. How so? Take the whiting, for instance. When I started reading to see if there was any connection between it and the dolphin, I quickly realized that a whiting isn't really a whiting at all, but I couldn't figure out what it actually is. The whiting described in the books is more like a cousin of the codfish and only lives in the north. Neither the pictures nor the descriptions match the whiting we have, so I have no idea what kind of fish our whiting actually is. All I know is that it's not a whiting at all, and it's definitely unrelated to the dolphin, because it's a fish with scales, while the dolphin is a marine mammal. What's a marine mammal? Henry asked. A vertebrate sea creature that gives live birth. All right, put that in simpler terms. Okay, so whales, dolphins, narwhals, and porpoises are the main types of marine mammals. They're not fish, they're sea animals that nurse their young. Well, that's new information for me, Henry said. Now then, Sam said, if you two have wrapped up your little tangent, let's get back to the topic at hand. What do you know about this fish I'm holding, Tom? Why don't you call it a shark's pilot like you did a year ago? Well, it's because the books treat this one the same way they do the whiting. They describe a shark's pilot that's as different from this fish as a whale is from a calf. So honestly, I'm not sure what to call this fella. Did he put up a fight when you caught him? Oh, he certainly did. I was convinced I had a 20-pounder on my line. When I reeled in this little creature, with what looked like a matchbox on its head, I was really disappointed. I had to check if it had a hidden steam engine because it fought so hard, and that's when I noticed the matchbox and its strange, upside-down shape. Hey, Tom, Henry piped up. Why do you think our southern fish are so overlooked in books? I've pondered that myself, and the best explanation I can come up with is that there's no significant commercial fishing interest here like there is up north. Most natural history books and encyclopedias are written up north or in Europe, which is why so many interesting fish down here aren't mentioned. Take the pincushion fish, for example. I can't find any reference to that odd creature in any book. What exactly is a pincushion fish? Sam asked. It's just a hollow sphere, a globular bag about twice the size of a walnut, perfectly round. Is it half transparent, maybe? Is it red, fading into white, filled with water, and covered in little pimples like pinheads? With its eyes and mouth right on its round body, making it look like a face on a full moon? Sam asked eagerly. That's exactly right. That's the pincushion fish. I thought so. That's my other one, Sam said. What do you mean? Tom asked. That's the other thing I wanted to show you, but I couldn't find it. I caught it with the cast net. And you kept it to show me, Tom replied. Yes, but it vanished. Of course it did. It spit itself away. What do you mean by that? Well, if you take a pincushion fish out of the water and set it down on a board, it'll look around for a moment like it's judging you. Then it starts to spit, and once it spits out all the water, you're left with just a little lump of jelly. They're quite fascinating. I wish there was a good popular book about the fishes in the south and the strange creatures that live in our coastal waters. Don't you think some of these are covered in scientific books? Sam asked. I think many of them are, but plenty aren't, and those that have names we've never heard, so only a naturalist could understand the descriptions or recognize them when they see them. It's different with northern fishes. If a northern boy wants to learn more about a codfish, he looks it up under the name, codfish, and finds the information right there. He doesn't need to know in advance that the cod is part of the Gadus family or the Morhua vulgaris species. When he looks to learn about the whiting he knows, he finds it under the name, whiting. But the scientists who write those books, as knowledgeable as they may be about the fish we call whiting, probably don't know it goes by that name, so they don't file the information under it. They only go as far down as New Jersey and discuss a fish there that's also called whiting, even though it isn't the true whiting. Had they known that there was yet another distinctly different fish that shares that name down here, they would have told us about it as well. "What's the solution?" Henry asked. "For you, Sam, or me," Tom replied. "It's to delve into science and specialize in the fish of our southern waters. Once we do that, and share everything we learn through careful observation, all the scientific writers will welcome the new information we contribute to the broader pool of knowledge. That's how discoveries have always been made. Why can't we start right now? Because we haven't mastered the art of observation. We lack the fundamental principles necessary to truly comprehend what we see. Let's develop our observational skills and study science in a structured way. Then we can observe with insight and genuinely contribute to knowledge." "You're not planning to write your book on the marine fauna of the southern states tonight, are you?" Sam asked. "No, of course not," Tom said, laughing at his own enthusiasm. "Then let's head to bed. I'm feeling tired," Sam said. Chapter 7. The three exhausted boys fell asleep quickly, and the rhythmic sound of their snoring filled the hut, hinting at a late rise the next morning. However, before long, Sam stirred restlessly in his sleep and began tossing about. Henry, sensing his agitation, soon sat up in the bunk and started slapping at himself. This jolted him fully awake, and as Sam and Tom continued shifting uneasily, he didn't hesitate to speak to them. "Hey, guys, we're under attack." "What's going on?" Tom mumbled, rubbing his arms vigorously, moving from one spot to the next. "Mosquitoes," Sam said, scratching at his scalp furiously. "Worse than mosquitoes," Henry added. "These feel more like yellow jackets or hornets, and they're inside our clothes too." "Yikes!" Tom exclaimed, suddenly jumping out of the bunk. "I didn't even think about that." "What is it?" both boys asked in unison. "A swarm of sandflies." "Sandflies? What are those?" Sam asked, puzzled. "Hang on, I'll show you," Tom replied, stepping outside to stir up the fire for some light. Meanwhile, the boys rubbed and twisted in discomfort, feeling as if their skin was on fire. Though no single spot hurt badly, every inch of them felt inflamed, and the more they scratched, the worse the irritation grew. When Tom finally lit the fire bright enough to see, he revealed their tormentors. Sam and Henry spotted tiny flying insects, true flies, barely larger than pinheads. There were millions of them, filling the air, and every time one landed on their skin, it brought a sharp prick, followed by an unbearable burning sensation that made the night feel even more torturous. Henry was initially skeptical. "You can't be telling me," he said, "that those tiny pests have caused all this." "They have," Tom replied. "In fact, I've seen them kill a horse, harassing it to death in just a few hours. They can swarm under a horse's coat by the millions, covering it completely, so much that you can see the hair move with them. But they aren't gnats." "But listen, Tom," Sam interjected. "When I barely touch one of those things, it not only dies but breaks apart all over the place. They don't seem strong enough to stay together." "I know," Tom said. "So what? How can such little creatures bite? And how do they get through our blankets and clothes? I think they'd shred themselves trying." "I think so too if I didn't know better, but they do somehow get through without damaging themselves, as we know all too well." "Do they even have teeth?" Henry asked. "Not really. They have a sort of rasping mechanism that's just as bad. They also have a nasty saliva that gets into the wounds they create, and that's what stings so much. But we need to get a good smudge going." "What's a smudge?" Sam questioned. "I'll show you in a moment," Tom replied, as he started a small fire right in front of the tent. Once it burned for a bit, he smothered it with wet leaves and moss, creating a thick cloud of smoke that quickly filled the space. "This ought to clear the tent of them," Tom said. "I assume sandflies can't stand smoke," Sam remarked. "Not at all," Tom responded. "It's common here on the coast to have smudge boxes outside every house." "I can understand why they wouldn't like it," Henry grumbled, coughing and wiping his stinging eyes. I can't say that I find smoke particularly pleasant myself. But what is a smudge box, Tom? Just a shallow box of earth set on a post, meant to create a smudge. I see, said Sam. But when you say that sandflies aren't gnats, what do you mean? I mean exactly that, replied Tom. Then what are they? Flies. Isn't a small fly just a gnat? And what is a gnat if not a small fly? Henry chimed in. The two are different, I assure you, Tom responded. That's a common misconception. I've heard folks say they could handle mosquitoes but couldn't bear gnats, yet a mosquito is a kind of gnat, and what they refer to as gnats are really just small flies. What exactly is the difference, then? It's all in the body shape. All flies are two-winged insects, and gnats fall into that category, sure, but gnats have long bodies behind their wings to help them balance. Mosquitoes are the best example of that. These sand flies, as you can see, have much shorter bodies. Yes, but they do have very long bills, Henry remarked. That's true, Sam said, but this is all new information for me. I expect it is. Most people think that a whale is a fish too, but that isn't the case at all. What are you up to, Henry? I'm flipping a coin, Henry answered, having stepped out of the tent and moved toward the large fire. Flipping for what? To decide how I will meet my end, Henry replied with a serious expression. If I stay in the hut, I'll suffocate from the smoke, and if I'm out here, the sand flies will get me. I can't quite decide which fate I prefer, so I'm flipping a coin. That's good, there's a breeze, said Tom. If it picks up, you might not have to choose. How would that help? Wouldn't it just blow the smoke away and give the sand flies a better chance? No, it would blow the sand flies away. They can't handle much wind. A breeze eventually picked up, but it wasn't until dawn that the boys finally managed to sleep, their skin still irritated from the relentless bites of their tiny foes. They had learned their lesson, though, and for the remainder of their time on the island, they made sure to create a smudge in front of the hut before trying to get some rest. It wasn't common for the sand flies to swarm as they had that night, so it wasn't usually necessary to fill the tent with smoke to the point of discomfort. Chapter 8. The next morning, the boys' first priority was to dig their well. It was a fairly simple task, as they only needed to excavate 4 or 5 feet through the soft, sandy soil. Instead of making straight sides for their well, they shaped it like a bowl, allowing them to walk down to the water and scoop it up as needed. With a hut to call home and a well providing fresh water, they were finally free to begin the adventures they had come to the island for. Naturally, fishing was their first choice, but after a few hours, the tide rose too high and the fish stopped biting effectively. Let's play a bit of Robinson Crusoe, Sam suggested, winding up his fishing line. In what way do you mean? Tom replied. Let's sail around our territory and see what the island looks like from different angles. Who knows, we might spot some savages or come across some game. Sounds like a great idea, but we should head back to camp first to stash our fish and grab the gun and the sail. We should also think about having some dinner while we're there. They quickly wrapped up their meal, eager to set out so they could make the full circuit of the island before it got dark. It looks like rain, Tom said as he shook out the sail, but a little rain won't bother us. There was a strong breeze, and the boat set off with a lively bounce, rocking quite a bit because the wind had been blowing all day, creating more surface waves than usual in those usually calm waters. Tom lowered the centerboard, which steadied the boat somewhat, allowing it to carry the sail without much risk. The plan was to sail about half a mile off the coast so we could see the island clearly. However, as we reached the eastern shore, the sea grew rougher, and the crashing waves on the beach warned Tom of the broad sands on that side. I need to get out further, he said. What do you mean by that? Speak plainly, replied Henry Black, who always seemed unwilling to understand anything that sounded nautical. I mean I need to sail farther from the shore. Why's that? Asked Sam. Because of two reasons, Tom explained. First, the water between those two islands over there sweeps in and has a strong push against about half a mile of our island's coast, which means the next stretch will be quite choppy, and I'd rather be well offshore. I think you want to stay close to shore if there's danger. Then if something happens, we can land, Sam argued. That's where you're mistaken, Tom said. I don't think there's any real danger as long as we keep our distance, because this boat is seaworthy with her centerboard down. However, she isn't meant for the beach, and no boat is. I don't want to get her stuck on the sand. That leads to my second point. I want to be far enough out, because from the sound of the waves and the look of the surf, I suspect there's a long, sandy beach extending from this part of the island, and I don't want to risk getting into shallow water. But why couldn't we land if there were danger? Sam asked. If it were me at the helm, that would be my first move. I would too if we had a harbor nearby, Tom replied. But don't you see? If we ran aground on a sandy beach with waves coming in, we'd quickly find ourselves in a situation where there wouldn't be enough water to float us, except when a wave rolled in. The boat would rise with each wave, then crash down onto the hard sand, and I can assure you, she wouldn't take much of that. Haven't you noticed that nearly all shipwrecks happen near the shore? That's true, Sam replied. Ships that meet their end usually hit the breakers or something similar. I just never thought about it before. By this point, Tom had managed to secure at least a mile of open water, but the sea was getting rougher by the minute. The wind had picked up to half a gale, and despite having reefed the sail tightly, the boat tilted precariously. Tom told his companions to trim ship by sitting on the gunwale. Sam Thackeray soon realized that Tom was anxious. He quietly asked, "Do you sense danger, Tom?" "Oh, no," Tom answered, "or at least I don't think so." "Yes, you do. I can see it on your face. I want to say right now that whatever trouble we face, losing our heads will only make it worse. The key is for you to stay calm, because you know more about sailing than we do. Then you can guide us on what to do, if anything." "Thank you," Tom said. "Here's the thing. Looking at the horizon out there, I think we're in for a squall, a sudden and violent gust, on top of the steady wind we have now. If we can cross this open space before it hits, we'll be safe behind that island over there. And if the squall doesn't come, we'll be fine right here since the boat is seaworthy. But a knock-over squall could flip us over. It's coming, so let go of the sheet. Cut it anything." As he shouted this, Tom tried to steer the boat into the wind, while Sam and Henry released the sheet, freeing the sail. If the storm had hit the boat while the sail was still tied down, the Red Bird would have capsized immediately. But since the sail was free, there was less resistance, and Tom hoped this would help them avoid disaster. He pointed the boat into the wind, which was the wisest choice. The storm hit just as the sail swung loose, but before Tom could maneuver the Red Bird fully. To the boys, it felt as if the boat had been struck by a massive force, so abruptly did the squall descend upon them. With the bow nearly facing the wind, the boat bucked like a wild horse, swung around wildly, and almost tipped over, but somehow it didn't capsize. Unfortunately, the mast snapped clean off, and the sail tumbled into the water, held only by the rigging. "Cut the rigging, Sam," shouted Tom, "or that sail will swamp us. Now everyone sit down in the bottom of the boat. No, Henry, not on the seat, but in the bottom." Tom had to yell these commands to be heard over the deafening roar of the storm, which showed no signs of calming down. He knew their immediate threat was that the boat might tip over, so he insisted they all sit in the bottom for balance. This brought them close together, allowing them to talk without screaming. "Well, Tom?" Henry Black asked. "Well," replied Tom, "we're not in danger of capsizing now. That risk has passed, but there's another one just as serious ahead of us." "What is it?" Henry asked. "And what can we do about it?" Sam inquired, his calm demeanor and courage amidst the chaos earning Tom's respect. "We're being blown toward the beach at breakneck speed," Tom said, "and we're going to hit it soon. We've lost the oars, and even if we had them, we couldn't use them in this sea. All we can do now is wait. When we hit, the boat will be smashed to pieces. Everything hinges on where we make landfall. If it's far from shore, the big waves will pound us against the sand. Our only chance is to swim with the next wave as soon as the boat hits the beach, trying to land on our feet when it pulls back, and then running as fast as we can up the sand. If we can reach the safety of the surf's break before the next wave comes, we'll be all right. But that's our only shot. It all rides on where we strike. "Take off your boots," Sam shouted. "We might have to swim." Tom and Henry nodded in agreement. Everyone stared anxiously at the shore, which seemed to rush toward them at incredible speed. Suddenly, Tom shouted, "There's a reef up ahead. When we hit, try to cross it into the calmer water." In an instant, it felt like the sandy reef had shot up from below, slamming into the bottom of the boat like a hammer, splintering it into pieces. What actually happened was that the boat, propelled forward by a wave, had reached the sandy ridge and suddenly dropped as the wave receded. It hit the bottom hard enough to crush its sides and floor into a mangled heap. The boys were nearly knocked senseless by the impact, but they quickly regained their composure and ran forward in water just inches deep. Before the next wave could strike, they crossed the narrow sand ridge and plunged into the deeper, calmer water beyond. The waves crashed against the reef, and while they surged over it, their power was absorbed by the rocks. Inside the barrier, the boys encountered water that was only slightly choppy, nothing more than a gentle swell. The distance to the shore was short, and they quickly swam to it, dragging themselves onto the sand, soaked, without hats or shoes, utterly exhausted, not just from their physical efforts, but from the mental and emotional strain they had endured.